babies. Do you want to be in the video? My goodness. Hello, hello. Oh, who's my boy? You're my boy. Who's my boy? You're my boy. Oh, the worst sons. So remakes are bad. There are some people who enjoy watching bad movies because they're bad. This movie isn't even bad enough to be enjoyable. It's just bad. I don't think we should stop making new stuff out of old ideas, but this ground is fairly well trodden without adding something new. And what they did add that was new was very bad. It was so bad. This is too girl boss. They have girl bossed too close to the sun. They did add an economic and social justice for women angle, but it is so shallow that not even Flat Stanley could drown in it. Like, I'm not religiously opposed to remakes. I think remaking new stories out of old ones is just endemic to the way stories work. You can only make things out of your own experiences or things that you've read about, and you can see the influences of writers in their own work. So nothing is new, and I don't think this isn't like a hot take. Nothing is new. Everyone agrees in the world that, you know, good writers borrow, great writers steal. But you gotta do something good, and this was just really bad. This was really bad. I think my main question is, why does this exist? Who was asking for this? What focus group decided this was a good idea? I have to believe that this was two separate projects. There was a project starring Camila Cabello, and that was just like a leading vehicle for her to try to launch her into acting, because I don't think she's acted before. And some Cinderella remake for Amazon Studios. And then they were like, well, we've got these contracts, let's just throw it together. There has to have been some kind of Faustian bargain at play here, because they got so many stars for this utterly soulless work of complete trash. Like we don't think James Corden will sign on to anything and put his name on anything. I think that the man, he knows that he's not liked, and he's trying to get his bag while he can, which I can respect. And, you know, I'm sure he's got kids to put through college. Like, that's what he's doing. But Billy Porter can pretty much write his own ticket right now. Idina Menzel is forever a queen. I mean, she's the rare woman in Hollywood who keeps getting leading roles into her 40s and 50s. I think she's probably 50 now. Like, Idina Menzel, despite being older, has the advantage in Hollywood of name recognition and star power. So she can Susan Sarandon herself through this bitch. She can Meryl Streep to the end of the road. She's gonna be fine. I think Camila Cabello, like, this movie's more of an asset to her than it is a detriment, because now at least people know she's an actress, because I didn't. They really brought, it just makes me so crazy. They really dragged our girl Idina Menzel into this. Like, she has Frozen, she had Wicked, she didn't need this. Like, why did they do this to her? They had to have had something on her. They had, like, some pictures, or, like, the girl invested in, like, Bitcoin, like, something happened. Other than that, there aren't a lot of names. I guess they got Pierce Brosnan, but, like, it's upsetting. Minnie Driver is criminally underutilized. It upsets me, the amount that Minnie Driver is just ignored by the industry. She is a glimmer of beautiful light in this otherwise pretty bleak world, and Minnie Driver deserves everything. But like Idina Menzel and Billy Porter, they are far too talented for this disaster, and frankly, I'm embarrassed for them. Billy is clearly doing his best with what he's been given, and I desperately wish it was working. One of the things that really confused me about this movie is, like, who is this for? What is the age demographic? Because the sex jokes about the front tail are clearly not for kids. We get like 3 or 4 different dick jokes about its size, about how the prince apparently is not well endowed. Like, who is this for? What age demographic is going to enjoy this? Like, I know a lot of movies feel the need to put grown-up jokes into kids' movies so that parents can enjoy them, but it's been shown many a time that that doesn't really work. Like, just because something's risque doesn't make it smart or funny. I kind of got the vibe they were trying to be Bridgerton really badly, and it's kind of embarrassing. I guess the vibe for this movie is nobody's having a good time and we're all upset that we're here. The dress sucks. One of the worst things about this movie for me is that like the Cinderella moment is one of the best parts of all of these movies, all these iterations of the movie. Like when you watch Sam come out in the wedding dress that her godmother has saved for the next trip down the aisle, when you see Ella in her beautiful white gown and her hair up, and when you see all of these iterations of Cinderella feel as beautiful as they are, that's a great moment. And I did like that it was her design for the dress, because the whole through line for this just shithole of a movie is that she is like, her talent is unrecognized and she needs it to be like seen. She needs to be seen. But generally speaking, the dress was so blah and boring, and like everybody's talking about how great a designer this girl is. Not everybody. People seem to think that she has like some kind of talent, right? She just uses tulle. Is tulle the finest fabric in this kingdom? Like, don't get me wrong, it has a time and a place. Like, weirdly, all of her dresses look exactly like what my friends and I wore to bat mitzvahs in 2009. Another thing that I didn't like that I haven't seen anyone mention is that all the people of color in this movie are British, which is actually something you see in a lot of movies. This is actually something they talked about with the cast of Black Panther, because they really pushed for their characters to have kind of a Pan-African accent as opposed to like a British post-colonial accent, which wouldn't make sense because obviously Wakanda was never colonized. That's part of their whole thing. They'll often cast British people who are people of color, or they will ask people of color to do a British accent. And what confuses me about that is that this ball is supposed to be a lot of people from all over the world. Like, they're supposed to be international royalty, so why is everyone British? And it's because it's kind of like vaguely racist thing of like, well, British is posh and like other accents just aren't. Which is like kind of a really vague level of racism, but it still bothers me, you know? Like, okay, you can be Black, but you have to be British too. Obviously, this is just a small nitpicky detail, but it is a part of how people of color are portrayed on screen. I also don't understand the time period this movie's supposed to take place in. Like, there's racial equity, but still sexism, so it's clearly like some kind of fairy tale land. The themes of this movie are just truly bonkers. The class system is also confusing to me here, because in most versions of the story, Cinderella and her stepfamily are upper class. In most iterations, the family is noble, it's just that they treat Cinderella like garbage. So like, I really don't understand the scene where Cinderella's like, I'm just a short peasant. Like, you're not a peasant though, clearly. Like, even if you're impoverished, that doesn't like remove your gentility. Now, minor self-roast here. I didn't realize this was a jukebox musical until we got to Material Girl, because I am just that out of step with pop culture. I heard like Rhythm Nation and I was like, oh, this sounds vaguely familiar. I wonder if like this is like from like the work of one particular writer, like maybe the person who wrote that song also wrote the rest of the musical. The thing is, if they were going to keep Cinderella a musical, they should have just chosen better songs, or songs that had consistent themes, or songs that were of not even similar genres, because you can mix and match genres in a musical, but there's just no thematic unity across the music, and it's a disaster. If you can ruin Queen, something is desperately wrong with you, and they actually stole that from Ella Enchanted, which is just like deeply sad. Like, if you can't even buy the rights to music in a way that feels honest, like, and also when they used it in Ella Enchanted, it was being sung by someone who felt so desperately alone in the world. And then when it's being sung by this guy, he has all the advantages in the world, and we don't even really understand his character on any level, because the acting is basically just a plank of wood. I think one of the worst things in this movie is just the dreadful acting, because pretty much everyone is awful in it, because the writing is so bad and the pacing is a disaster. The integrity of this movie is just so compromised that not even good acting can save it. Like, Minnie Driver is an actual treasure, and even watching her scenes couldn't make this movie tolerable. It's just such a mess. I'm not even gonna talk about the animal scenes. I don't want to hear about it. I am just Men in Black flashy thinking that out of my head. In fact, after this video is edited and recorded, I'm just gonna pretend I never watched this and never speak of it again, because oh my god, is it just the worst. With a lot of films, you can tell there's a driving passion behind it, even if it's like misguided in some way. Like, even if it's a movie that just doesn't quite hit, you can tell that it was somebody's baby. Even like a manufactured like saccharine disaster like Cinderella, the movie that was made with Lily James. That movie, like, somebody lovingly created it. The experts at Disney, one or two of them, really loved telling the story. They had the Disney magic to sprinkle on it. Amazon doesn't have any magic, just labor violations. There is something inherently magical about a movie that is made by people who care about it. Even a really low budget thing with no name actors can be amazing if it's made with the right tools. And one of those has to be passion. You really cannot fake that. It's impossible. You have to have some driving force behind it. And clearly the driving force behind this was, we don't have enough Amazon originals, or we have some contracts, people we have to get out before the end of the fiscal year. This movie was not made because somebody loved it. This movie was made specifically to make money. This movie was grown in a lab genetically to make money. And not even like a lot of money, because people are already subscribed to Amazon Prime. They already have your money. They created this movie for no reason that I can think of other than to make my life worse. This movie has a vacuum where a soul should be. And honestly, I don't really understand why they made it a Cinderella story other than to trade on the name Cinderella that will get people to just turn it on for their kids already and be like, well, it's a Cinderella movie, we know what happens. People like tropes, but like they didn't even use it correctly. In this movie, some of the characters are barely recognizable, and there are just additional characters and plots added for the hell of it. Like the lamp shading of the original Cinderella story is thrown in there, of course, because no adaptation would be complete without completely shitting all over the original. Oh, we're not getting married, we're just in love. Like, okay. Anyway, the whole reason, hey, no biting. I love you, why are you like this? Now, I know most of these takes aren't super original, although I like to think I have my own little special something to impart. But the main reason I wanted to make this video shitting all over something that nobody liked is because there is one true Cinderella. A lot of people made TikToks and Twitter threads talking about all the wonderful Cinderellas that already exist, that this one just didn't need to. And I agree with all of them. But in my opinion, the one true Cinderella is the one with Brandy and Whitney Houston. I call it Brandy Cinderella because Brandy is Cinderella. You can also call it Whitney Houston Cinderella or Whitney Cinderella because she is not only one of the stars, but the producer. I think it was made with her studio. And it's just really amazing that it exists because it probably, in most universes, wouldn't have. Because for the time when it came out, which was the late 90s, it was pretty fucking revolutionary. If you never had the pleasure of seeing it, let me talk you through it. So I will just say right off the dome that I'm a little biased because Brandy Cinderella is the Cinderella of my childhood, but I didn't actually see the Disney Cinderella movie, the one from the 50s, until I was actually a little bit older. So this is the Cinderella that I remember watching when I was a little girl. And it was one of my favorite movies, not just because it's an objectively good film, but because it has such great music. It's actually a film adaptation of the Oscar and Hammerstein musical, Cinderella. And that's one of the reasons this is so special, is because all the songs are bangers. I'm not saying that any other version of Cinderella is bad, by the way, in this video. I'm just saying that, like, this is the one I'm emotionally attached to and the one that I think is the best. At least the one that currently exists. Like, there's so many great ones. There are thousands and thousands of Cinderella adaptations, and I'm sure yours is awesome too. I'm sure your favorite one is the best one. But anyway, like, as a child, this musical was so magical to me, and even looking at it with adult eyes, like, I can see, like, oh, this was made with no budget at all. It was made in a budget of $12 million at the time, which is $20 million today. That's nothing, if you're wondering. Most movies are made in the, like, a cheap movie these days is maybe like 45 million, 50 million. So take from that what you will. So first of all, there is not a dud to be found in this cast. Brandy, Whitney Houston, Jason Alexander, Bernadette Peters, all legends at the top of their game. I think if there's a weak singer here, it's probably Whoopi Goldberg. But like, if Whoopi Goldberg is your weakest link, you're probably doing fine.
Ashamed? I've never had to be ashamed of anything my entire life. I'm certainly not going to start now.
The colorblind casting thing might not seem super revolutionary now, but this was the 90s, which was a very different time. You know, people were still doing blackface in the 90s. The 90s, a different time. I wish it was less different. I wish we'd been better back then. Now, colorblind casting has its time and place. I think that in a lot of ways, like for example, school musicals make a lot of sense to colorblind cast, but it's been criticized in the last couple of years as a concept because it fails to account for how race shapes people's stories. And I think excluding the stories of people of color while including them and erasing their race just can't work when it comes to thematic storytelling when race shapes so much people's lives. And I think in general, that's something that people of color have better things to say about than I would. So in this story, it doesn't matter that Cinderella's black, except for all the little girls who watched it and thought, she's beautiful and she looks like me. And I want to emphasize the importance of having an Asian man as a romantic lead. Like, if you watch pretty much any television show, there will be an undesirable Asian man stereotype. And that has not gone away. It is still a problem. The actors in this movie are just luminous and perfectly casted. And their races don't really factor into the story, so I don't think it's a driving thing. But I do think it is important for kids to see themselves in the heroes on screen. Speaking of the casting, the chemistry in this movie is insane. Victor Garber could have chemistry with a plank of wood, which is why he would have been perfect for the Amazon Cinderella, but he is so excellent. And he and Whoopi Goldberg really give off like old married couple energy. I love Whoopi Goldberg's like little gasping thing because she had kind of a nagging Jewish mom thing about her, and I liked that vibe for the queen. So I find that really fun. I thought she was great. Everyone was perfectly cast in this because Bernadette Peters really gives off just like frustrated, angry mom energy with her daughters. Every intonation of hers, every gesture is perfect. She is just a master.
Rubbish! This isn't about love. It's about marriage.
There isn't a bad line read in this whole movie. It is masterfully directed. There isn't an ounce of fat on this movie either. It is a perfect cut of meat, this movie. The only sequence that I could say feels a little bit extended is the one where Lionel is taking care of all of the stuff for the party. But that's important character building for him. And also important to show the extravagance because we have to understand as an audience how important this ball is and how annoyed the prince is going to be about it. And also it gives Lionel a little more like weight to him because if the movie were to exist without that scene, we wouldn't see how put upon Lionel truly is and he'd just seem kind of like a lazy servant. So I like that one a lot actually, and it's also just a really beautiful scene and fun to watch. On that note, there are flat characters in this movie, but no one-note ones. For example, the stepmother stays the same from the beginning to the end of the story. She's always conniving, she's always greedy. The king and queen start the movie loving their son and wanting him to be happy, and they end the movie loving their son and wanting him to be happy. Everyone's motivations are super clear. All of the characters make a lot of sense. Like, they're not just playing on archetypes either. Like, the prince is a handsome prince, but he's also very thoughtful and kind to strangers. He doesn't misuse his authority. He has kind of a self-awareness about him, as in the first scene where we see him, he's criticizing the royals. All of these characters are so well realized, partially because of the excellent directing, and partially because this is just a cast of all-stars. Like, this is MVP Cinderella. One of the things that I love about this movie is the color scheme and the united aesthetic of it all. The color scheme can be best seen in the ballroom scene where everybody is wearing different variations of the blue and purple gown, except for the stepsisters who do kind of stick out a little bit. But you can really tell, unlike in this Cinderella movie, that all of these gowns are from the same era. They're all in the same place, kind of. It doesn't look as though any of these dresses were snatched out of thin air and in a random era. Everything has a time and a place, and it all looks right together. And that's hard to do, and it clearly wasn't done for the new Cinderella. And Brandy not only fits in with the color scheme, she sticks out. Not only because she's Brandy, she's luminously gorgeous, but also because her dress is slightly better styled for her figure. A lot of the other dresses look pretty uniform. Hers is more fitted, more structured. Hers is just chef's kiss. Also, like, Whitney Houston is just a vision that works because she's supposed to be an otherworldly figure, but she's not like, you know, wearing an Apple Watch or anything. Not that those existed in the 90s. I also love that the royal couple and the prince complement each other color-wise. First of all, it's a visual reminder of their relation to one another. And second of all, it sticks out against the sets, which are not super vibrant in the palace. The palace is a little bit more muted, and the royals are the ones who pop. I also love the outfits of the Stapp family because they are obviously impractical and stupid. The first view we get of Bernadette Peters as stepmom is of her having to take little tiny steps in her outfit because her skirt is too narrow for her to walk properly. That 100% tells us something about her character right away. I also love that you can clearly tell that while Brandy is dressed beautifully and elegantly, the stepsisters are completely overdone. They are wearing something that is too gauche. They are wearing too many things. Bernadette Peters is carrying this ridiculous bag that is just looks insane. You can tell that they're not appropriate to be that right away. They totally stick out. Ultimately, the reason I love this movie isn't just for the nostalgia factor, but because it's just such a good piece of work. It's only like 90 minutes and it has more story in it than this piece of trash. As like straight down the barrel Cinderella remakes go, I think it's the best one. The Rodgers and Hammerstein musical is already so good, but all of the elements united in this movie to make it really great. And there's actually some recordings of this musical done by Julie Andrews, and she's excellent in it, but it doesn't have the raw magic. This movie just has a certain kind of like magnetism to it that makes it so special. And I don't think it is because we loved it when we were children, because I've watched it a number of times as an adult and it's beautiful. In conclusion, stop remaking things, buy new intellectual property. It is a travesty, but apparently Disney never released this musical with a soundtrack. So I guess just go watch it on Disney Plus. It's amazing, it's totally worth your time, and it won't even take that long. Also, your kids would love it. It hasn't got any dick jokes in it. I think the most like sophisticated humor in there that the kids will get is like, you know, the little parent banter. And there's also just, you know, you don't really appreciate the excellence of the acting when you're a kid. Overall, I would say this movie's definitely worth your time. I guess this is going to be the first in a series of videos I make that are just stop doing remakes because there are too many. I don't know why this is the era of remakes, but I hate it and I wish it would stop. I should have more videos out soon. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. If you have requests for content or ideas, you can leave them below. If you want to tell me that your favorite Cinderella, write that as well. If you like this movie, what's wrong with you? Anyway, bye. Yes, you're very handsome, but you will only get into trouble. Meow. Are you gonna talk the entire video?